Hello. We hope you're enjoying your When Faith Meets Pedagogy conference experience. This workshop is called Catholic Leadership and Service, a call to action. And this workshop is geared towards teachers of grades 6 to 8 who want to add social justice and service action to their religious education units. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andrea Siska, and I'm currently a K-12 literacy resource teacher for the Toronto Catholic District School Board's Curriculum, Leadership, and Innovation Department.
And my name is Christina Roti, also a K-12 literacy resource teacher at the TCDSB. So why this resource, why now? Well, during the early days of COVID, we were tasked with creating resources for our own teachers in our board. We were tasked to look for things online that were relevant, didn't rely too heavily on texts that we would need to purchase, and were basically things that students could access easily online. So we thought this would be excellent to share with others throughout the province. We also believe that leadership and service learning are at the forefront of Catholic education and faith formation. And with the departure of the WE organization from Canada, there was a big gap in this service and call to action. So now we decided we could probably create something along the lines of looking at the resources that we used during COVID and tying those resources in with the service and action projects, but also looking at it from the lens of cross-curricular subjects, so looking at it through all of the subjects. So we wanted to make sure that students were learning about social justice issues affecting our communities, along with achieving all those curriculum expectations I spoke about. So not only were students benefiting from the curriculum and learning, they would also benefit from this call to action and service. And not only would they be benefiting, but their communities would be benefiting as well. So we're looking to build those stronger community connections, and we're looking to tie those curriculum expectations in. So it's not only looking for service, but looking for how kids can learn throughout that as well. As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic brought an abrupt end to many extracurricular activities, as well as it curbed the participation of many social justice causes. You know, it was a time that a lot of people were asking for donations and people were at their most neediest. So we believe that demonstrating caring and concern for others needs to remain an integral part of our lives during a pandemic or not. As Catholic educators, we also believe that the tenets of social justice need defending not only on the margins of school life, but in every facet of life and education. So this is why we decided to merge these two together. So you're going to see when we show you the document a little bit more how we interwove the Ontario curriculum standards along with religious education curriculum to have a service and a call to action.
Thank you, Christina. So before we delve deeper into our resource, we'd like to just give you a brief overview of what to expect. So we really sought to create a resource that puts Catholic leadership and service learning at the forefront of teaching in Catholic schools, like Christina mentioned. The religious education document puts importance on living a moral life and living in solidarity. These strands focus on conscious formation and imparting that on children that each person is responsible for participation in society, to discern and to freely choose their vocation and to make a contribution to the world. This is something that really stuck out to us, and we really wanted to make that a focal point for the resource. Our resource also focuses on the core teachings from these strands to help students build their skills and take action on issues that they care about, from poverty to bullying to the environment. Our goal was to create a series of lessons that have accompanying action projects that spotlight a different social justice issue, not only meeting the religious education expectations, but various science, language, social studies, mathematics, arts, and physical education curriculum expectations as well. Students will engage in experiential learning through call to action projects for each unit, and they will work and learn to become active and engaged citizens who will seek to create transformative social change. So there is a unit for each core subject area.
Yes, and when you mentioned that too, not only was it for every core subject, but each and every core subject relates directly back to religious education. And I know we have a lot of our boards and a lot of our classrooms have a religious education text that we can use. And sure, they interweave some of those social justice, but does it really do a great job of doing that whole cross curricular? And so that's why we kind of decided to do something like this as well. So something to consider. Thank you so much, Andrea, for that. Something to consider before you go through this and before we go through this. So when we created this resource, we took these questions into consideration. We invite you to reflect upon these questions as you tour this resource. So I'll just read them out for you quickly. So besides using a standard religious education program, as I mentioned before, how can we integrate Catholic teaching into various curriculum areas in a genuine and meaningful way? So instead of just reading it on the page, how can we make it meaningful for our students in our classrooms? And not only our students, but the community at large, so the community that we're most tied and connected to. How can we make Catholic social teaching central and relevant to daily lives of students, both academically and on a personal level? So even looking at the pandemic, a lot of people were cut off from the whole entire world. How can we make sure that that doesn't happen again? How can we stay connected, and how can we stay connected to our communities, especially those who need our help the most? What strategies can we use to engage students in religious education? Sometimes religious education becomes an afterthought or something that we rush through, but how can we really make that engaging for students and to have them understand what does the scripture mean? So a lot of what we did really ties those lessons in and explains scripture and explains the different reasons why we do things in our Catholic faith, and how we are helping students to connect what they see and learn in the classroom to their lives and what's going on in the world around them. We decided that instead of taking the whole global approach, which a lot of the times, a lot of programs tend to do, we wanted to keep it a little bit more local, except for one of the units. Most of these can take place within your local community. And how can we help our students see the importance and value of their efforts beyond performative action? So we're not just doing it to be seen, we're doing it because we need to help others. We're doing this because it's meaningful. And we're doing this because this is what Jesus has told us to do and what we are taught in our faith. And why is it so important? So we're going to try to answer a little of these as we go through, but also, again, keep these in your mind as we go through this resource. Andrea?
Thank you so much for that, Christina. So we are going to now take a little tour of the resource itself. So upon entering our resource, which is in the form of a website, you will find, of course, a message from the Catholic Curriculum Corporation, and followed by the resource specifics. So what you need to know about this resource if you are embarking upon using it, which we hope you will. Then it'll be followed by all of the subject areas we integrated with religious studies. So you'll see here language and religion, mathematics and religion, social studies and religion, the arts and religion, science, technology and religion, health, physical education and religion. After that, you'll notice that there is a collection of very useful resources that we actually used ourselves when we created this resource. And this includes all the pertinent curriculum documents, as well as the Catholic graduate expectations and the fundamental principles of Catholic social teaching. It is, before I begin to demonstrate how to navigate the site, I'd also like to draw your attention to the quick access navigation tool on the top right-hand corner. If you click on this, you can basically navigate directly to absolutely any page on our site. Okay, but as you're familiarizing yourself with our resource, we suggest maybe browsing by going through the different subject areas. For our purpose today, we are going to be demonstrating our math and religion unit. And we are going to take a quick look at it and just click on this and get started. It is important to note that the layout and design of each unit, so each subject, is identical. When you get to the launch page for each subject, you will find a link and brief description for each lesson within the unit, as well as a unit overview as well. Okay, so it just looks like that. So a little brief explanation about lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course our call to action project, which is the culmination of each unit. It's a culmination project for each unit. So we're
Andrea,
yeah,
just instead of going into lesson 1, perhaps we can take them through that lesson overview so you can see each and every lesson starts this way.
Absolutely. So here we have our overview, and we have each lesson starts with this as well, but this is for the overarching whole unit. So this unit is how data supports environmentalism, and we'll start with a summary and background information about the entire unit. Then we'll have our, Ontario curriculum expectation links. So both not only for math, that you'll see here, and it's divided by grade because there's some differences between the grade level and the expectations, as well as our religious education expectations are listed here. We also have Catholic graduate expectations that were considered for the creation of this particular unit. Following that, we have suggested guiding questions for the overall unit, the learning goals, as well as the success criteria for students, which as much as it'd be great for you to co-construct with students, always having, what your ideas are for their success in the back of your mind is always great and helpful. From there, you can go back to the math and religion launch page. You can go back to the unit, or to the whole project's homepage, or you can go to the first lesson, which is Introduction to Data Collection and Climate Change. So you'll always be able to navigate back, but of course you can use the quick access navigation tool that I showed you just before. Okay, so each lesson is 60 minutes in length, but of course we leave it to teachers' discretion. Whether they feel like the students in front of them may need a lesson to be a little bit longer and maybe drawn out over maybe 120 minutes or whatever it might be that works. Each lesson is a 3-part lesson and consists of a minds-on activity, which you'll see. So here are the curriculum expectations, guiding questions, and whatnot for this particular lesson. So each activity, as I said, or each lesson has a minds-on activity, and then an action or a learning piece, followed by an opportunity for consolidation. As you can see, each lesson will have a vocabulary section. And we suggest teachers use this or encourage teachers to use this to pre-teach any important vocabulary that they think would be important or that they think their students might not know in order for them to better understand the lessons that are coming. Our mind-on activities, they use a variety of different engaging ways to activate prior knowledge and to get students really thinking about the subject that we're focusing on.
And not only activating their prior knowledge, but building that prior knowledge, as you mentioned, not only with vocabulary, but in case that students don't have that background knowledge.
Absolutely. And then our part B, which is always our action, as I mentioned, this section is really about, explaining the teaching part. And this is in the form of explanations, videos, slide decks, articles, and other interactive links that really teach the important concepts and skills that students need and gives them an opportunity to explore the material as well in the subject area. And then we have our consolidation section. Now, while Catholicity is woven into all areas of the lessons, our consolidation section is really where we hone in on our students. We want to really get them to understand, and they're tasked to make the connection between what we are learning with the Catholic social teaching and with scripture. So this is their opportunity to demonstrate that they understand that all these connections and that they are really engaging with, Catholic social teaching and, living a moral life and living in solidarity. Okay.
Well, and like even mentioning the last bit here, you're just going to scroll down to the extension piece. So each and every lesson also has an extension piece. So if you'd like to go on further, there's usually 1 to 3 different things that you can do with your students that can build on what they've learned in that lesson and continue it on, especially if it's something that they want to learn more about. Again, we really suggest that you take this at your own student's pace. Like Andrea had said, every single lesson is 60 minutes, but I know that most schools, let's say the arts, you have a 30-minute block for an art once a week, let's say, but our lessons are 60 minutes. So how would you spread that apart, or maybe extend it across? Again, that's up to your discretion. Thank you,
Exactly.
Andrea.
Yeah, really to make it your own and see what works with your classroom, with your schedule for your school. And that's, that'll make it work even better for you and your students. It's also important to note that these lessons were really designed not to be taught in isolation, but they really build one upon another. So doing lesson one is going to inform students of the skills and some of the concepts they need in order to engage in lesson two. So it's really, and all of these lessons really work towards the call to action project. So to teach them in isolation would not be doing them justice. And also it might be confusing for your students if you just skip ahead to like the call to action project, for example. So we also have a section here while everything is linked. So everything you click on is linked and it goes directly to the resource that we've embedded. There is a list at the end of all lesson resources if you just wanted a quick reference. Then you could go back to the launch page or to the next lesson, which is, our ecological footprint in this case. Christina's
Oh, you know what I wanted to add? No, I wanted to just add about, so we had decided, so I mentioned earlier about, making things digital, especially in this time during the pandemic, schools closing down. How did we, navigate those times when, our books are at school and we didn't have paper for the students to write on? So we really geared this towards being a solely digital resource, but you do have the options, as Andrea mentioned, in the resources tab. You have options to print out PDFs if that is something that you'd like students to write on. So you have the option of making it or using it either way. So digital, and if you want to use it in person or hard copy.
Absolutely. And even the instructions for teacher will say in a classroom situation, you can try ABC. If you're using this on an online platform, try this. And that's why we have Google Docs as well as Google Slides that students can write directly into. So a student would never, if they were learning it from a hybrid situation or learning from home, if we were in another, situation where we are tasked to work from home, students do not need to print anything. They can do everything directly from links that you give them on your Google Classroom or whatever platform that you might be using. So we've tried to, take that into consideration to make this both something that could live completely online or could live in a classroom as well. So I'm going to turn over to Christina now, and she's going to look at the culminating or our call to action projects. I'm going to go to our quick navigation tool here and go to our call to action project for math and religion.
So again, this call to action project is going to look the same for each and every unit that we have created. The only thing that will be different is what the call to action is going to be. The specific call to action will be related to a certain social justice issue and related to what you can do in your community. As I mentioned earlier, all but I think one of our social justice calls to action deal with global. So all of them, deal with local. Only one deals with what can you do in the global sense. So we're really looking at making that change within your own communities. Start small and maybe work your way to the greater, larger community. So we really focus on identifying what the social justice issue. So in this math unit, it was looking at climate issue and what needs to change. So asking those questions. And every part B, it reviews all the lessons that we did before and introduces our plan. So most of them have this one video, and it shows students and how they worked together to enact change within their own school community. So showing that video is really important. So some of the videos we might have included. So for example, in this unit, we want to go for eco certification in the eco schools. So how do you do that? So these videos really closely relate to that, and how can students be part of that change? How can they not only working with the teachers, but really work on their own, especially in those grades 6, 7, and 8? How can they be leaders for the community and even lead the other students within the community? So looking really for students to make that change. And then part C, we really build our teams so we can work together as one whole big group. You can work together in smaller groups, and we really refine our action plan. So we have this action project template that you can use, and filling this out will really help students, help them with the plan and help them scaffold as much as is necessary. You can do that with them, but they can also do that through this template, which is also provided. And then part D is to spread the word, take that action. So what are you going to do? So this is something, a checklist that we created. How can we as teachers say, yes, they do demonstrate, students do demonstrate knowledge and understanding. They do show thinking and application within this project that we had done. So this is something that you can assess with students as well. So looking at that, and you can decide to provide a level, a numeric letter, or a score if you decide to. So again, these 4 little steps you can look at. Do they demonstrate knowledge and understanding? Do they demonstrate their thinking, application, and are they able to communicate this thinking? So really looking at that in the greater scheme. And again, once you start these calls to action, and again, you don't need to do 70 different projects, you can really decide to hone in on one, and whatever the students want to do, you can have several projects happening all at one time within your school. And again, this happens within the classroom. So it's not going to happen as an extracurricular, it's going to happen within your teaching time. So it doesn't take any extra time. And then our part E is really tying it into what we are here for our Catholic connections and our scripture and reflection. How are we doing God's work? How are we doing God's work to bring that positive change in the world? And all of our calls to action are tied to Jeremiah's scripture, which, and you can see here the quote on the side, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you prophet to the nations. So showing the importance of all of us as people born in the image and likeness of God to do godly work here on earth. So how do we do that? How are we tied to this? So again, it doesn't matter that you're young or that you are not, not an adult, but you can make change. And again, going through this in this scripture, each call to action goes through the scripture and saying, you are not just a child. You can do so much with anything that you put your mind to. So reading that and going through. And then we take them through, students through the Catholic graduate expectations. So we sometimes, go upon and look upon these and don't really go too deeply into what are the Catholic graduate expectations. So each of the lessons leading up to this, some of them tie in, and you can see really closely how they do relate to everything that we've tied in here. So really looking at those and bringing them to students' attention, making them aware of what these are and how, hey, look, we're doing this. This is how we're doing this.
Exactly.
Really,
we found that
yeah.
7 and 5, Christina, really lend themselves very well to our projects, but teachers can feel
yes.
free to select whichever they found, spoke to them and worked with their students and the projects that they ended up, working on their call to action.
Yes. And so, we don't want to just, end that call to action with, we've done it, now it's done. No, we want students to reflect on it. We want students to say, hey, this worked really well. This didn't work so well. How can we change it? How can we do something a little bit more better? How could we, if we were going to do this again next year, how can we change it? Or did it work so well? Is this something that we can do again? Again, this reflection piece is really important for students to look upon and to think about, how did I do here? Or how did we do here? And then again, like every other lesson, we have all of the resources there. They're available in PDF as well as Google Slides. So again, you can use them both digitally or not. It's totally up to you. So really these projects, again, our suggestions are only suggestions. Use what you think your community might need a little bit more. Maybe your school is already an eco school. Could you do something else? Just looking at those. So really just tailoring it to what your students would like to do, making it meaningful for them, as well
Absolutely.
as the community that you're in. Yeah.
That's great, Christine. Like if your school is an eco school, maybe the focus could be more on, how do you navigate food at your school? Do you have pizza days, or do you have hot lunch days, or and what is the waste that's being created from even like an event at your school? Because sometimes we do have eco schools who still have, music events or what dances, and it's like basically all of a sudden, that consideration has falls off, and you have plastic forks and spoons everywhere. So there are different ways of navigating or finding that niche in your school in order to bring that topic to life and for students to really see it in action. So there are plenty of ways to satisfy call to action projects within your school community.
We'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have any questions or feedback for us, we'd really appreciate it. I know half an hour is a little short time to give you some idea of what we created, but really go through the resource. And if you have, again, any questions, feedback for us, please fill out this Google form. It's in the bit.ly in the left-hand corner there on the bottom. Yes, perfect. And so fill that out for us. That would be greatly appreciated. We only asked you to name your school board. And if you would like us to get back to you, if you can provide us with your email, that would be great. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.